All right. Good evening. It's Sunday, April 12th, 2026. And a big news weekend, right? Big news weekend. We've got some stuff to talk about tonight. Want to check and see who's here. If you're coming into the room, make sure that you say something to me. Tell me where you're from, that you're here paying attention. It is always more fun to do these things live, my personal opinion, than it is to do these at when we record them and then we send them out. And I really like the interaction, so it is helpful for me. And when I know that somebody's on the other end, where you're from, Wayne, upstate New York, Shelly, where are you? Where are you, Shelly? I see. Now I'm going to just talk a little bit here as we're kind of going through a new technical setup. Are you seeing a couple come through? I'm checking there. They're coming through. You're starting to see the. Okay, we're seeing them coming in. All right, slowly but surely, they're all here. Well, hey, listen, got a great show tonight. We're going to talk about a couple things. So, obviously, the big thing on everyone's mind is not. Well, maybe the biggest thing on our minds is fuel prices. I'm going to tell you myself. I was filling up my truck, which is a diesel truck. Good old American diesel, and I was filling it up this weekend, and I noticed that it was the biggest. I think it was like $175 to fill up the truck, which is a chunk. Now, from a guy who had a Tesla, and there's a guy in the studio here who drives a Tesla. He's laughing at me right now, saying, "Yeah, that's why I still drive a Tesla, and you don't." But I am. Look, I'm all for having the power when I want it. And that big diesel engine is plenty. I got lots of American muscle there to propel whatever it is I'm moving around, right? But I know it's got to be on everybody's mind, because it's not just the cost of things like fuel, but it's the cost of our everyday sundry items, food, electricity. So anything that really deals with there's Shelly. All right, Shelly. Now I know Judy's got to be not far behind, because Shelly always brings in Judy. But these sorts of things, of course, have us, and they have our minds. We've probably all been a little bit focused on wanting this war in Iran to come to an end. And I think one thing we can say about President Trump is he's been pretty clear from the beginning that there's one way this thing comes to an end, and that is if Iran agrees to no further nuclear enrichment. Well, so what do? If you're the president, you send off J.D. Vance and the vice president. He's a lawyer. He's been a tough negotiator, former senator, former Marine. So he's been tough as he gets into kind of a new role. And he's goes to Pakistan to sit down with the Iranian team and to have a negotiation. And as many of you might have expected, Iran was less than happy about the idea that President Trump had put forth. Now, we talked about this last show, because what was all over the airways, and of course the kind of drive-by media, they were really saying, "Oh, Iran's got a 10-point plan, and Trump's agreed to it, or he's agreed to it in principle." That's not what he said. He said, "Hey, we have a good starting point, right? A good starting point to sit down and talk through these details." And here we go. We see J.D. Vance goes to Pakistan, and a lot of laudatory comments from J.D. towards the Pakistani delegation that, hey, they did everything they could to bring this to a conclusion. But it became clear after 21 hours that the Iranians were just not interested in what we had to offer. Now, President Trump, being a business guy, he was hedging his bet. So he moves a couple of battleships through the Strait of Hormuz and says, "Okay, just in case things don't go right, we'll be ready." And what am I seeing? Well, what I see now is that the president has come up with a very, clear statement on his expectation, and because of that, he has lined out that we're going to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, because the Iranian delegation has said No thanks. We don't want your deal. We're not going to follow that. So, what do you guys think about this? I mean, it is incumbent. Maybe even before we go to comments, let's think through this for just a second. So, if let's go to the slides. I want to talk about some of the folks that have been up, and people in particular who've been very critical of the president. And I try not to do this too much, but this may bring us back to some Virginia politicians along the way. We have, as luck, or well, some kind of luck would have it. You can say if it's good luck or bad luck. We have a lot of politicians right now who are pushing for. We talked about this last show, and it's not going to stop. By the way, it's only going to get worse tomorrow. You're going to see this probably 3 and 4 times what we've seen it lately. And that is, they're going to be very critical of President Trump. They're going to talk about what a fool he was. It's his fault that we're in this mess. It's all of these things that have led up to now somehow come back to Trump. When the gas prices go back up tomorrow, or continue to go up tomorrow, when food prices go up, when energy prices go up, they're going to say this is Trump's fault because of the war with Iran. But let's just pause for a second, because if we go back 50, 60 years, well, maybe, closer to 80 years now, we could see a very similar situation that took place in Britain pre-World War II. So there was a prime minister there named Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain, really, the country was fatigued. They had just come out of World War I. Not unlike us, by the way, not unlike us, having just come out of Afghanistan and Iraq, and they were tired of war. The last thing the people wanted was another war. World War I was, if everybody remembers your history, it was the war to end all wars. It was the mother of wars, right? So it was a war that included all the major powers of the country, or of the country, all the major powers of the world. It took many years to unfold, high loss of life, of course, destroyed the lands that the battlefields were fought upon. If you ever want to see some really, scary, terrible stuff or terrible images, there is an artist who has taken all the World War I images and World War I movies and made them into, basically used AI and tools to recolor them and make them move. It's like you're watching the ghost actually come back to life, and you get a sense of what it was like, not through a black and white picture, but through a real colored image. And I think that connects reality a little bit. You see these people as real folks who actually were going through trials and tribulations. They were fighting for something bigger than themselves. That war comes to an end. Everybody's ready to move on. They want, these happy days are here again, right? And leading up, of course, part of the defeat of Germany in World War I leads to some really off-putting rules and regulations against Germany, which leads to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich. The whole idea that, hey, we've been beaten by these people, and now we've been taken advantage of by these people. So nationalism creeps in, and the Germans start to say, yeah, what he said. They are taking advantage of us. They're living a hard life, much harder than they lived before the war. And because of that, Hitler starts to rise in both power and influence, and the corporal becomes the commander-in-chief. And suddenly you've seen his speeches. I mean, he's a great speaker, he's a great orator, and he's very emotional. He's able to draw in the people and get them excited about what's happening. Well, Neville Chamberlain, who's the British Prime Minister, 1938, says, hey, this guy Hitler sounds a little crazy, but we want to make a deal with him because, yeah, he's invading Poland, but he's not invading Britain. And he's doing some other things, but not to us. We need to stay out of this. Of course, Winston Churchill is famously in the background saying, hey, you don't negotiate with a tiger while you've got your head in the tiger's mouth, right? That's not a way for us to choose. We can't let all of our allies fall one by one and then try to recover. Well, Chamberlain, if you've seen any of the latest in the last 10, 15 years, they put a number of really great movies out about about Churchill, and you kind of get the background of this if you don't want to go read a history book and kind of understand the bigger picture. But what happens is at the end point, you've got Churchill here saying, hey, we just got to go take this scumbag out. You can't have people like this in charge of countries, in charge of powerful armies, in charge of weaponry that can destroy. Because here's somebody who will put it to use, and we don't know when. We can't predict where. So Chamberlain says, hey, not so fast there, wild man. And if you follow, the BBC actually makes it a rule that Churchill, because Churchill's also a compelling orator, isn't allowed to give speeches that are recorded. He's not allowed to do things. So he gives a really famous St. George's speech. Anyway, it's a story for another day, but he's talking in parallels to the events of the day, and he's really trying to convince and message to the British people, hey, we've got a problem, and we need to dispel it. We need to dispatch it. We can't sit idly by and hope for the best. Chamberlain chooses a diplomacy with Hitler over confrontation. He signs the Munich Agreement, giving away territory, right? And he declares, hey, we've got peace for our time, right? Peace for our time. Now, Chamberlain also famously was ill, or was about to become ill, about to become aware that he had cancer and was dying. So there were probably a lot of things in his life that were going on. Now, parallel that to today. Okay, so we had war back then. We just got out of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now here we are faced again with a country in that part of the world that has made no bones about their plan. Their idea has been, we are going to one day, as soon as we can, take out the great Satan. That's the United States. That's who they call, and the little Satan. That's Israel. Now, Wayne, I know what you're going to say. This really isn't about Israel, right? This is about the people of the United States and the interest of the world. It's the interest of really mankind. So here in Virginia, we have Senator Tim Kaine. So Tim Kaine wants diplomacy over Iranian military action. He defends the wonderful deal, the Iranian, what was the deal called? The nuclear arms deal that we had. And these are the ones that Obama put in, where Obama paid the billions of dollars. And he's defending this, saying, boy, what a fool Trump has been. He's going down in history as the worst president, the worst politician ever, because he ignored the rules or the agreements that were in place, and he decided that Iranian nuclear deal was not the right deal for the United States. Well, what he really decided was nuclear armament for Iran was a bad idea, and I don't think we had to wait for President Trump to do that. So Kaine has also attempted to block military authorization while Iran builds their nukes, right? So they've gone through a number of things. Now, Kaine is just an example, because there are many, many politicians on the left who are using this as a drumbeat, and don't think that this is not something that we're going to see grow and continue to grow as they push on and on. It is a very strange thing to me that we see this many folks, right? There are this many people all on the left, and we went through a list of them last time. Ilhan Omar, there was just a bunch of them, right? And all of their thoughts were about criticizing the United States while we're at war, while we're dealing with combat operations. Okay, there's no declaration of war. We're dealing with combat operations. And it used to be, and I don't know when this came to be that this was acceptable. It used to be that once the lines had been crossed and the bullets had started to fly, that you would expect Democrats, Republicans, and independents to join arms, face the enemy, and go execute the enemy. How are we going to dispatch the enemy and win the day? We did not get caught off by having people inside the country. That was a little bit later, right? Once we had the Ruskies after World War II, we started to have a little bit of socialism from within and communism from within. But you wouldn't expect that sitting members of Congress who are here representing the American population. Now, we can talk about the Constitution, and I'm definitely for the Constitution. All I'm saying is we are in a conflict at the moment, and for good reason. Just like Churchill told Chamberlain, hey, we can't do business with this guy because you can't trust what he's going to say. You can't believe that he's not going to take the army. And look, just change it. There were no nukes when Hitler was around, right? At least not in the beginning. He was trying to build a nuke, but there were no nukes available. Had there been nukes available, he may have very well started out with those, because he aimed to take back what he felt was Germany's heritage, right? Germany's heritage, the Prussian Empire, to rebuild this idea that there was something bigger and greater and grander. And part of that's just the story of the day, but that is very similar to what we hear with these Ayatollahs, right? They want to rebuild the Persian Empire. They really want to take down and push out Israel, push Israel out of the country. They want to destroy the United States. They want to weaken us at every turn. And we cannot sit back and let this happen, and certainly can't sit back and let it happen without a fight. So when Trump went in, and sorry, I know I'm kind of beating this horse here a little bit, but this is an important horse to beat, because we sometimes lose sight of the fact that there are implications for things that happen today that will echo in the days to come, days and years to come. And as I heard the president say today on one of the news shows, he said, hey, the last thing we want, you think the stock market is getting beat up now, let one of these Iranian guys drop a dirty bomb or a nuke, right? And that's true. Let that sort of instability sink in, because now you're talking about mass casualties, mass death. You know, what was it, 130,000 or 330,000 were killed in the nuclear blast in Japan in World War II. So imagine that. I mean, we would have instability and uncertainty, and probably a corralling of the wagons, right? So remember the old cowboy movies, they'd circle the wagons whenever they came under attack. We would have this in every country. And the question would be, were we going to a huge level of instability with nationalism being the story of the day? Would we have a huge breakdown? Certainly we have an interconnected world economy. We're reliant on having these relationships, and maybe too reliant in some ways, but nonetheless, we're reliant. What has been a buffer for the United States is we've had years and years of being separated by the seas. We've had these natural barriers that protect us from foreign governments, and we've been the most powerful government in the hemisphere, in the world. So people don't tend to come over here and pick a fight, and if they did, it's a hard place to go. Now, as we think through this with Tim Kaine, and I'm picking on Tim Kaine a little bit, but he deserves to be picked on. It is the idea that you have a sitting senator while things are going, right, while things are underway, that he's trying to tear down the United States. This is to me a terrible way to go. I understand if we were deep into this, if the president, were exceeding his authorities beyond the War Powers Act, which has been the law of the land, I realize not everybody agrees with that. It's been what's been around since the Vietnam, right? So tearing up the Iran nuclear deal was one of the worst foreign policy decisions ever made, Tim? I don't think so. I think one of the worst foreign policy decisions ever made would be to allow Iran to develop a nuclear bomb or a nuclear missile, and then to use it anywhere in the world at any time. We know that they've had attempts at the assassination of the president, of the assassination of other political leaders here in the United States. So there are people that will stop at nothing. And this feels a little bit like one of those maniacal bad guys in a James Bond movie. All right. Zero evidence of an imminent threat to the homeland from Iran. Well, Tim, I don't know. We had a missile fly 2,000 miles. Did they have to really hit the shore before you said, okay, well, now they're a threat? And do you really want the enemy? This was the argument again made by Chamberlain. Do you want to allow them to continue and build strength? And I'm sorry, made against Chamberlain by Churchill. You can't allow them to keep building the war machine. If they keep building the war machine, eventually they get what they need to enact the damage they are trying to enact. We already see them weaponizing the Strait of Hormuz, right? Can't let that continue. Tim also tried 4 different war powers votes to block military action, all blocked by the Senate Republicans. All right. Enough on that. But this one really has driven me crazy, just to see the number of people that are using for political fodder some very serious actions right now. And I feel as if that's what Tim Kaine has done, as well as many of the other Democrats. The Ilhan Omars of the world, I feel as if a lot of those folks are doing it because it may speak differently to a broader demand or a broader concept that these folks have, right? Are they really, loving America? Or are they really missing their native homelands, and they really want to bring those things here? So we are essentially under attack from all sides right now, from Iran, from the U.S. Congress, and then even in Virginia. Right? So to stay on the Virginia thing for a minute, folks, stay on the Virginia thing. We've got Virginia under new management and Abigail Spanberger. So let's just talk about Abigail and what she claimed to be versus what she has turned out to be. So she's a former CIA officer. You'll hear her talk all the time about the fact that she was carrying a weapon every day to work as part of the CIA. She was a moderate. She pushed herself out there as a middle of the road moderate. I am just here right in the middle. I want to see all the things that I can do to help Virginia kind of get back to it. Well, Virginia was left in a pretty good state by the last governor. $2.7 billion surplus, and a Commonwealth that was functioning pretty well. And the new governor, Spanberger, came in, decided that it was time to get some real action here. Let's take care of the Virginian people. And she wanted to give at least 50% raises to all the politicians in Virginia. And to do that, she knew she was going to have to raise taxes. So she decided to go ahead and also give Virginia the largest tax increase they've had. So not just spend through the $2.7 billion backlog or surplus that we had, but also to get into a few other things. And these are the problems that I have with someone like this. She won by double digits, by the way, over Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears. And Winsome did a wonderful job as lieutenant governor. Not such a great campaign was run by her. Look, campaigning and governing are obviously two different things. And in this case, we have a governor who it seems campaigned very well. It's yet to see how she's going to govern. And in the other case, we had a lieutenant governor who governed very well alongside the governor, but the campaign not so great. She delivered the Democratic rebuttal to Trump's State of the Union this year. So, look, folks, keep your eyes focused on her, because there's some other things that relate. We've talked about this before. There's a big vote going on right now in Virginia. We won't stick on the Virginia politics too long, but Trump had this to say about her. Hey, she's added so many taxes: a food and beverage tax, digital services tax, utility tax. Did you guys see there was a dog walking tax? So if you were a service provider, you were going to pay a tax in Virginia. So Trump's Justice Department has laid down the law to Virginia and said, hey, if you keep passing, or if you put these laws out here, and you pass these laws, we're going to take you to task on civil rights. So I think pay attention, keep watching there. Now I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit because I want to come back for just a second to talk a little bit on the Iran closure, and let's think about what we can look at this week. So there's not only a certainty in Trump's mind on what he expects from these folks, right? So we've had the face-to-face talks. Those talks have come to an end. We have also seen in the Strait of Hormuz, now we've created our own blockade. So fine. You guys don't want to come to the table, and you don't want to let ships through, and you want to play these games about what ships are able to pass. So now we have minesweepers out. We're removing mines. We are doing all the things that are legitimate. By the way, it's only about time, but it is happening that some of the rest of NATO is starting to send in equipment and ships. We have some British minesweepers there. They're coming through to help remove the mines in the Strait of Hormuz. We will expect to see that continues if we're going to continue to participate in NATO. It makes no sense that we pay most of the NATO bill and that we would continue to do that if anytime we need NATO, they don't jump right in and work with us, right? We're not saying you have to go join every war, but we do expect some sort. You wouldn't even let us fly out of our own bases that are in your countries. So this is problematic. So it's not unlikely that we're going to see renewed military operations. Now, I will say this: there was a silver lining that was left with the Iranians. So when the Iranians left and they made their official statement, they said, "Hey, we have not come to an agreement on the first round." Right? They mentioned the first round, so they left it open that there would be a potential second round. I think if they don't come back for a second round, it's going to be problematic for Iran. It's going to be problematic for the world. War is a bad thing. It's not something that we look forward to, any of us. But I can expect that we have neutralized the majority of their capabilities. While they may have, and I heard it yesterday, thousands of missiles left, they've got to dig them out from rubble. They've got to dig out the launchers. They've got to go find these things. They've got to put kind of the ragtag team together and then try to do something with it. And you can bet while they're doing that, if they're doing that we will be continuing to conduct military operations to diminish further their capabilities, to take more from them. Shutting down the Strait of Hormuz ourselves is a strong line. Saudi Arabia reopened, by the way. You know, there is an oil line that runs from a pipeline that runs from the Gulf across Saudi Arabia that avoids the Strait of Hormuz altogether, right? So I think they can get, 7 million barrels per day out of that pipeline. Pretty substantial. So a good portion of the oil in the region doesn't have to go through the Strait of Hormuz. And it's probably not a coincidence that Saudi Arabia built that pipeline, because they imagine that there would be times like this. And by the way, the Iranians did fire a drone over the early part of the weekend, maybe late part of last week, and attacked that pipeline and hit the pipeline, caused some damage. So renewed military operations, I'm thinking you can count on. Continuing to isolate Iran, I suspect that's also going to continue. You force people to take sides. Hey, we're extending an olive branch. We're recommending peace, but we have some terms for peace. And one of those terms for peace is that people are able to navigate the strait without being stopped. Why is it only one country on one side is allowed to stop the traffic for going through the strait? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. There is a tremendous amount of work to do here. The president remained pretty hopeful. I caught this just before the podcast tonight. The president made a statement and he said, "Hey, I think that these people are coming back to the table and they're going to accept every single thing that we told them, because there's really nothing else to do." I mean, it's hard to deny. It's hard to deny, at least from my point of view, that's likely. If you are Iran, now I want to go to the comments here for a minute. And look, if you haven't chimed in yet, tell us where you're from. Let's hear what's on your mind. Okay, scrolling back to the top. So I see there's Judy. Hey, Judy. And I see Wayne and I see Shelly. It's great seeing you guys. For some reason, my screen does not update, and it is I've got the strangest problems over the last over the last couple of podcast episodes. So I see. Is there something in there you want to throw up on the screen that I need to respond to? The challenge that I'm having is in timing. By the way, even when he does it this way, it's not going to come to me in real time. So it takes a minute for it to catch up. So I'm seeing 12 comments here, and I'm seeing Wayne has. Let's see. So Wayne says, I just got done watching a long video about it, and they said hemp oil. What's that about? Okay, they also ran on peanut oil. Yeah, you know what, Wayne? That's true. There's some guys who I know who used to take the cooking oil from like the fry joints, and they would process that into oil or into fuel for diesels. Yeah, the auto repair tax. Okay, you guys don't want to talk about Iran. Are you guys Iran'd out? I mean, come on. Let's hear something about Iran. It is an interesting problem. It's a bad problem, and we're going to see what happens over the next week, over the next couple of days. Now, Cynthia and I are going to be bouncing around. We've got a lot. This is a busy week for us, so we've got a lot of things happening this week. But I will be staying close, watching the news, and tuning in both at work and throughout the day to hear what's happening and see what we might be able to put together back here on our end. You guys stay safe, stay up, right? Don't get discouraged about this kind of thing, because there may be another step before we get across the finish line. One thing I do have faith in, and this is, well, there's more than one thing. One thing that I'll say I have faith in this circumstance that deals with the president is the president has been pretty true to his word. He tells people what he wants, and then he tells them what they'll get if they go that way, and he tells them what they'll get if they don't go that way. So what I can almost say with certainty is, let's look at it this way. President Trump cannot get reelected. He's 80 years old. He's going to turn 80 years old this year. If you can't be reelected, you're 80 years old, you have a big, and I think he already was born with a big I don't care button, but you've got a little bigger button when it comes to things like this. And when you know that the right thing to do for the people is one direction, right? You can't leave the enemy. You can't leave a determined enemy with a system to break you down in the future. He's got grandchildren. He's got children. And like most of us, we want to take care of those people throughout our lives. I think the president is doing that now, and I think that he's going to pay attention, and that I think Iran will ultimately pay attention. They may not pay attention tomorrow, but they're going to pay attention. And do they have to get a few more whacks with a stick? I don't know. I hope not. I hope not for the Iranian people. I hope the Iranian people can rise up and do something about this. I hope that the mullahs who are in power realize that, hey, it would just be better for us to do business and not be caught up in all this nonsense. Anyway, we want to hear from you guys. So if you like what you're hearing today, what we're talking about, like and follow. Make sure you share this thing when you're out. It helps us to kind of spread the news. We've been a while that we've been away from podcasting, so we've got to rebuild the audience. Our audience is growing, but we need to see it grow faster, and that means we need distribution. You guys can really help. Love it when you make some comments, when you like or follow, and then when you send it out and share it with your friends. So you guys be safe, take care of yourself, and we'll see